Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Okay, there, I hit the record button.
Okay.
Because on this particular podcast, I recently, Mike Hauk, say hi, Mike.
Howdy.
No, hi, Mike.
Oh, hi, Mike. Sorry.
I gave you a golden opportunity there, buddy.
I know, it's been a while.
So recently, in Model Railroad Planning 2025, Mike had an article published about his layout. And then I thought, well, it would be cool to talk to him about that. But then as we started talking about that, I remembered you had the cover story in May of Railroad Model Craftsman. And I thought we should talk about that.
Okay.
And so then I thought we should talk about both things. But nowadays, with the new and exciting shorter format, I think the odds on us talking about both things are slim nil and hardly at all. So wish us luck, Mike.
Okay, fingers crossed.
Yeah, wish us luck. Because I went back to look at your article about, or your RMC cover article, and I started coming up with all kinds of questions about that. And so also here tonight is our pal and long lost friend David Lund from all the way from Whiting, Illinois,
Indiana.
In Indiana, I knew that. But you're very close to Illinois.
Very close, yeah. I can see it from my window.
And you're a lifelong resident of Whiting, right?
Correct. Yes.
And it's spelled Whiting.
Yes.
And then we have Mike Hauk, who lives in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I apologize for that.
Well, we all have our crosses to bear.
You don't actually live in the city limits of Erie, Pennsylvania. You live on the outskirts. Correct. In a town called Fair or something.
Fairview. Yeah, we're in what they call West County. Yeah, West Erie County, actually not too far from the Ohio border.
How close to the Ohio border are you?
Oh, from here where I sit, it's maybe 10 miles, 8 miles, something like that.
And how long does it take you to get to Cleveland, which is farther?
About 90 minutes.
Yeah. Cleveland, Ohio. So are you a huge Cleveland Browns fan?
Not really.
Okay.
Nah.
Are you a fan of the Erie Otters?
Yeah, at arm's length. Not a huge hockey fan, but we've been to a couple Otters games. Yeah, it's fun.
Okay,
it's fun.
Cool.
Yeah, actually, we see more of the Seawolves during the baseball season. We usually try to go a couple of games down there at the ballpark.
What size is the ballpark? What is that? Is it AAA?
AAA or AA, I think. I think they're a farm team for the Tigers. I think Detroit Tigers.
We started going to, in Daytona Beach, the Tortugas, the Daytona Beach Tortugas, Tortugas, which is the word for turtle, I guess. Which is really cool because they play in the first stadium that Jackie Robinson ever played his first professional baseball game.
Wow.
And the stadium is still wooden bleachers, wooden floor. And the first time we went, I said to my wife, this is unbelievable. We are literally sitting in the same ballpark that Jackie Robinson played his first professional baseball.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can almost feel it. You could almost feel it. It's very, very cool. And that other voice you hear is none other than Derek Magnotta. Am I pronouncing that right? Is it Derek?
It is Derek, yes. And I'm sitting here in Birmingham, Alabama, where we have Rickwood Field, which is the oldest ballpark in the country.
That's right. It is.
Dating back to 1910, 1915.
I think I saw something about that on a news thing once, not that long ago.
The MLB played a couple of games here last summer, and it was a pretty big deal for the city.
Yeah.
Rickwood Field goes back to 1910, making it older than Boston's Fenway Park or Chicago's Wrigley Field.
And I've been to Fenway Park. I've not been to Wrigley Field. David, have you been to Wrigley Field?
No, I've been to Kaminsky Park.
Okay.
But not Wrigley.
Wrigley is where
the Cubs play.
I was getting there.
Oh, okay.
Be patient.
we got limited time.
That's true. That's true.
There's always time for baseball, though.
Yeah. Is that your favorite sport, Derek?
No, I'm a football fan. I'm in Alabama. Come on.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
That's the best part about having Derek on the podcast is I get to say Roll Tide.
Sometimes I wonder if that's the only reason I'm on the podcast.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So anyways, we're going to have Mike on here to discuss his cover story on Model Railroad Craftsman because he has a beautiful layout. And hopefully, if we all stick around, maybe we can do a show about, we'll see how far we get, but we've already chewed up almost 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes. So it's going to be, and then as I started to, refresh myself with the article from May, the cover story, was that the first time you've ever been on the cover? Like your layout's been featured on the cover of a magazine, Mike?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Were you as excited as I was the first time I made it?
It was pretty exciting. Yeah. My 13-year-old self was like, I still can't believe it.
And I'm assuming you framed the cover and hung it up on the wall somewhere.
No, my son said I should do that. But I thought, maybe that's a little over the top.
No,
I don't know.
No, I did that with my first cover story.
Did you?
Actually, I did it with every one of my cover stories, whether it was my layout or somebody else's. If I took the cover photo, boom, that baby's being framed and put on the wall.
Now, did you cut up the magazine to do that, or just put the whole magazine right in the frame?
No, I cut up the magazine. I went out and spent the money and bought an extra one.
Okay, I do have a couple extra copies. That's why I wasn't sure how you.
Yeah, so you just take that and get it framed properly. You will be thrilled to hang that somewhere. Like, don't hang it in the train room above the layout. Like, hang it, on the entrance to the layout or someplace like that. And you will never get tired of walking past a framed copy of the first time you were on the cover.
Okay, I will reconsider.
I absolutely guarantee you'll never get tired of that.
So, Mike, what was that like? Just to butt in real quick, what was that like? Did they contact you, or did you contact them for?
No, actually,
had layouts.
Otto got in touch. Well, I had written us. I had done what they call it, a kid bashing award article when they put out a call for that, and I got in a magazine. I thought, oh, this is fun. It was kind of an interesting project to write it up, and then. I'm on a couple different IO groups. Used to be Yahoo groups, now it's Groups IO. And I had posted something, I think, somewhere. And Otto Gondrak emailed me and said, hey, what do we got to do to get your layout in a magazine? I said, well, geez, I don't know. I hadn't thought about it that much. And I only have about maybe 30% of the scenery complete. And he said, well, that's okay. Write something up and send us some shots. And so we were back and forth and rough draft and worked out. So yeah.
Nice. Wait, this is only 30% of the scenery?
Yeah. If
this layout is incredible. I'm looking at the RMC article, and it's realistic for your prototype because you're modeling, central Pennsylvania, and in the RMC photos. If you look at the balance of the article, there are more cow figurines on your layout than there are people figurines. So that's kudos to you for your prototype representation. It's pretty impressive.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a representation of the quality of the staff here at the AML network. That the cow figurines are what catches our eye.
Well, the key thing is the cows are weathered. You got to weather your cows.
I was just going to say the color is just right. Yeah.
Did you seriously weather the cows?
Well, yeah. Drive by a field where cows are pristine, like they come out of the box from Prizer, you got to dirty their bottom half up a little bit. So I, got the pan pastels out and some dry brush brown paint and, dirtied them up.
I've never seen a clean cow, so.
Yeah.
Well, apparently you didn't work on the farm I did. We power wash them every day.
Oh, did
you buff the udders?
Yeah. You know what they say? A clean cow is a happy cow.
I guess.
David?
Yes.
Have you enjoyed your few stints at co-hosting?
Do I need to find a way to record this?
No, I just have a question. I have a question and a pointer.
Yes.
So the question is, have you enjoyed the few chances you've had to co-host the podcast?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me point out one thing to you. Butting in is imperative. You said that you just butt in. Just butt in, ask your questions, because it makes the discussion flow better. It creates discussion, which is what audio podcasts are all about. Discussion.
Is that what they're about?
Yeah.
I thought it was about counting cows and railroad photos.
No. And I can hardly wait to get Kelly back on here. I sure hope, Kelly, you're getting better, for crying out loud.
We miss you, Kelly.
Yeah, we miss you, Kelly. This is gonna go on your record, and your pay will be docked accordingly. So today, while I was looking at refreshing my brain about this about your railroad, the Susquehanna and New York Railroad, I first wanted to ask you the question. I mean, I know what it says in the article, but how did you decide to? Like, we've had this discussion before. I think the first time you were on the podcast was probably, 4 or 5 years ago, Mike?
Oh, yeah. Gosh, yeah. I think it was pre-COVID even. Yeah, so however how long that was.
Okay. So how did you decide to model the Susquehanna in New York?
Well, it was sort of iterative process. Long story short, I was going to do the Pensy Elmira branch because that ran through the same area, and we had a hunting camp up there, and I was familiar with it. But when I started looking at it, the Elmira branch did not have a whole lot of local switching, and it was before there was Broadway Limited. So the only way you were going to do the steam era on the Elmira branch was buy a lot of brass. And so while I was puzzling that out, I thought, well, I don't know, maybe the Susquehanna in New York, because it was manageable. It was much smaller, and it was obscure, so I could take liberties, and nobody would say, hey, this isn't right or that's not right, because the Pensy guys, sometimes they're rivet counters. So the Susquehanna was small enough that I could take some liberties as far as operational interest, because that was one of the main reasons I wanted a railroad was the operations interested me. And then right about that time, I got out of the Navy and we got a house, and I'm with a nice basement underneath it, and eBay started about that time. So I started looking for Susquehanna, New York stuff on eBay, and lo and behold, there was actually a lot of paper and artifacts and things that were available. So I started collecting it. Before I knew it, I had a banker's box full of old Susquehanna and New York ephemera, and it just kind of spiraled from there. And I thought, well, this is good. I can build a manageable layout. There's some operations on here. It's not too big. I can entertain, 4, 5, 6 guys in an evening. And it just took off from there.
And how many years ago did this begin?
Actual construction?
Yeah, well, yeah, like you were in the Navy for how many years?
About 9.5, almost 10 years. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so then you're a doctor, and you retired from the Navy, and I guess you retired. Yeah. 10
well,
years.
no, actually, I just left. I resigned my commission. I don't have a retirement or anything like that. I'm not drawing a pension.
You just left, like the boat docked somewhere, and you just got off and didn't tell anybody?
Yeah, basically. No. Well, no, it was. I left active duty. I left active duty in '97. It was the kids were getting to be of school age, and we had moved 7 times in 9 years, and it's like I don't want to drag the kids, every couple of years someplace. So, found a private sector job and ended up here in Erie. And I did kick around the reserves a little bit, but that got to be too much, and so I kind of just hung it up. If you don't owe time or money, you can resign your commission. So I didn't owe any time or money, and I hung it up.
How do you end up owing time?
Well, I owed time for I had a scholarship, part of my med school training, and so you have to pay that back. And then if you do residency training, which I did in the Navy, you owe time back for that training. So,
okay. So while you're either in school based on a scholarship or you're doing residency at a private hospital, then when you have to pay back that time or that money via time.
Correct. Actually, I trained at a naval hospital. I trained at the Naval Hospital in San Diego. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
We just not that long ago. We had probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. We had an interview with Linda Eskin, who lives in the San Diego area.
Oh yeah. San Diego's I'm not a big city guy, but San Diego's a nice city.
Yeah, and so we learned lots about San Diego. Yeah. And she said there was no trains, and then I found the Imperial Valley, the San Diego and Imperial Valley Railroad. So then it turned out there were trains in San Diego. And of course, there's Balboa Park. There's that famous model railroad display.
Oh yeah, yep.
In San Diego. Okay, so then so this is all happening about 25 years ago.
Early 2000s. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So now you got you bought a basement that happened to have a house on it.
Yep.
And so then you've now made the decision about the Susquehanna and New York, which, by the way, as I was investigating this whole thing, is part of how you got interested in it was Tom Tabor's series of books about logging railroads in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah. There was. Well, he had a whole series of books. I think some of them were co-authored with another fellow. I forget his name, but anyway, a whole series of books on logging railroads in Pennsylvania. And there was one, I forget the title, but it was like Ghost Railroads of Central Pennsylvania or something like that. And there was a section in there on the Susquehanna and New York, and it was kind of cool because driving up to our hunting camp along Route 14 there north of Williamsport, not too far from where Brad Williamson lives. We drive up there, and by the time I was old enough to go hunting with the men, Hurricane Agnes had occurred, and all the bridges on the old Elmira branch were wiped out. You could still see them, and the roadbed and all that, but the trains were done. There was no trains running because it was destroyed by the hurricane. But I think my dad or grandfather just happened, they knew I was interested in trains, and we're heading to the hunting camp, and my dad and my grandfather just happened to say, oh yeah, there used to be a railroad yard over there. And I, what? And I was enough of a rail fan, at age 12 or 13, that I knew that there was really no large yards north of Williamsport. I think, what the heck are they talking about? And looking through Tom Tabor's book, and then there was another book put out by a guy named Caseman, the story of the Susquehanna, New York. And I picked that up a little bit later. Anyway, there was a railroad yard there, and it was the Susquehanna, New York. It was all a stand of pines by, the mid 70s. But, and that kind of piqued my interest because, wow, there used to be a whole railroad thing over there, and now it's just woods. And I don't know, that was just kind of cool to me.
It's cool to think about nature reclaiming the railroad, right? Like this railroad existed, now it doesn't. And I mean, how many people are modeling the Susquehanna in New York? I mean, are you the only one that you know of?
There's a few people out there that have contacted me over the years because, well, I had all this stuff from eBay, and I started doing an online diary. I started a blog, about building a railroad, and I'd post the decent photos I had collected, and people would contact me. It's like, oh yeah, non-trained people. It's like, oh, I'm glad I found your website. My dad used to work for the Susquehanna, New York, or we used to live in that farm back there in that photo. And so it was interesting to communicate with those folks.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in Pennsylvania for 20 something years of my life, and I had never heard of the Susquehanna in New York. And now reading the history of it, it's just fascinating. I mean, think about like a bridge line between the Reading and the New York Central, and it existed in all of these towns I know, but didn't know there was an old railroad there.
Yeah. And you can still see it. I got on the government USGS website, and there's a way you can mess with maps on there and the LIDAR, which is a laser or something or other, and it can see where the earth has been disturbed. And if you compare old aerial photographs with the LIDAR, you can still see where the bridge abutments were, where the roadbed was. Actually, there was a ramp to the coal dock in a little town called Marsh Hill. You can still see that on the LIDAR. So there is traces of the railroad up through there that you can still see if you know where to look today. There was a lot of flooding, multiple floods up through that valley of the one creek in the past 25 or 30 years. That's wiped away some of the roadbed there. but there are still traces.
And in the RMC article, it said that you wanted to have a large enough model railroad to have a sense of going somewhere. And it, based on your track plan, it looks like you go from North Towanda to Newberry. What's the ratio of the section of the New York Susquehanna and New York? It won't be the last time I confuse SNY with the NYSW. You can tell from Eastern Pennsylvania. So what's the ratio of the section of the railroad that you're modeling to the section of the prototype railroad as it existed before it was scrapped?
Boy, I don't have a hard number for you. I know the whole line was maybe 42 miles or something in length up over the mountain, including some of the trackage rights on the Elmira branch. I don't know. I don't have a specific number for you off the top of my head. I will say that I tried to space the towns out to be at least a train length and a half apart, and then the peninsulas are designed so that you're only facing one town or location at a time. It's basically once through the scene. There's no overlapping and looping around and that kind of thing. So it's pretty significantly compressed. There were some towns I left out that there was not much industry by the 1930s. So there was some other stuff I could have added, but it would have been too much. And I wanted to leave negative space for the trains to run, and not have it too scrunched together, I guess.
Because the pictures you have they're beautiful landscapes. I mean, it looks like the negative space you'd expect in Pennsylvania and New York, where it's like, the sort of trains are going through the middle, but you have mountains above and valleys below. It looks,
thanks.
Looks legit.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty remote. I did a one hunting season. I went up early to the cabin we had and drove the truck up through there. A lot of the road bed had been turned into access roads for the state game lands. All that territory up there is now state game lands. And that you could still drive up through there. This was before all the flooding that the roads got washed out, but it's pretty remote back in there. You can still see some of the remnants of the town of Lakeland. There's still foundations there from the chemical plant and I think the stave mill. They made barrel staves. And a couple others, and there was a few people lived there. A couple people. There were some cabins, and there's a lady walking her dog along the road, and I stopped and I asked her, this is Lakeland, right? She's, oh yeah, and I showed her pictures. I had Casement's book and some other stuff, and I said, I'm interested in the old railroad and the industry that was here, and she said, oh yeah, funny you should mention that because. Joe Blow, whatever he is over here in his house, he still occasionally has some black stuff bubble up into his basement. Well, he had built a house on top of the old wood chemical plant, and there was stuff in the ground that was bubbling up, I guess, periodically if it got real wet out or they got a lot of water.
No.
So, and there's a guy named Matt Carl. He runs the, it's called Barkley Mountain Heritage Museum. It's up in this little crossroads called Leroy, Pennsylvania. And he's a big historian, not only of the railroad up there, but also the logging industry and their coal mines and all that. And he's got a couple of walking tours he recorded around Lakeland and the old foundations of all the buildings and structures and things that were there. And I think they're on YouTube. So yeah, his name is Matt Carl, and walking tour of Lakeland. I think if you look for it on YouTube, it's in there.
Yeah, this is what in Pennsylvania we always refer to as God's country, where there's not much going on.
Yeah, not much in there. Snowmobile trails and game lands, and well, now fracking. Now the next mountain over is where all the fracking is along Route 414 from Canton up through Towanda. About every half mile, there's a well pad in there. And so that was big. I think if the railroad had survived, they probably could have made a little money hauling frac sand and pipe in and out of that area because the Marcellus boom really changed things up there.
Oh yeah, that was a huge benefit to the railroad that I model, the Delaware Lackawanna.
Yeah,
I mean they turned a whole old D&H yard into a frac sand transload, and they were getting at one point at the peak of it 35-40 sand cars a week.
Oh yeah,
up to Carbondale. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the old Susquehanna, New York, that was torn up in 1942. So that was way before the Marcellus boom.
Yep.
So the other day, our buddy Derek here introduced me to something called Rail Guide. And Rail.guide, and it shows all the railroads based on whatever time you want. So, I mean, if you went to Rail Guide, you'd probably be able to see all the trackage.
Well, it was Matt Milligan who introduced me to it. Okay. And I immediately introduced you to it.
So Matt Milligan introduced Derek to it, and Derek introduced me to it. So a shout out there to Matt Milligan, who almost cut off one of his fingers. Matt, get better, buddy. That's what this podcast could be. Is just about, hey, blah, 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 get better.
We have a community.
Yeah. So now, have you ever been to West Leroy?
I don't know. It sounds like that's even smaller than Leroy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I may have driven through it, but
yeah, I would think you did on 414.
Okay.
And then while I was investigating or going through your article, you talked about these books that were written by Tom Tabor.
Yep.
So then I decided, I wonder, so then, I mean, these books are available through eBay and other places like that. They're not being published anymore. What does he call it? Out of print?
Out of print. Yeah.
They're out of print. They're not being published anymore, which is the same thing. And they're written by a fella named Tom Tabor. So you type in Tom Tabor in the Google machine. You work the Google on the internet machine, and it comes up the Tom Tabor Museum in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And there's actually this Tom Tabor guy actually has a museum in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And then inside that museum is a huge model railroad display and a collection primarily of O-gauge, three rail stuff. But this guy was well known in the area.
Oh yeah. He was a big historian, pretty well known. I think some of those books might still be in print. I think some of the ones he collaborated on, because I was at the Logging Museum of Pennsylvania up, where the heck is that? West of Wellsboro. And that's really remote. It's unfortunate because it's a really beautiful museum. They have a shay in an enclosed building. It doesn't run, but you can go in there and climb in the shay and ring the bell and all that. And they have a nice model railroad in a separate building that was built by the Keystone Loggers. They were a modular group out of Cincinnati, Ohio, I think. And their guys got older and didn't want to haul these modules to shows and whatnot. And I helped get contacts with them to the Logging Museum, and they ended up transferring ownership to the museum and hauled it up there and reassembled it. And that's a neat little model railroad too, narrow gauge at 0-3 in one of the buildings. So that's a cool museum if you ever get a chance. It's
where's the museum?
It's it's between Coudersport and Wellsboro, I think.
The Pennsylvania Lumber Museum.
Yeah.
And it's in Ulysses, Pennsylvania.
Ulysses. Okay, if that's the town. Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
Anyway, they have some Tom Tabor books there in their gift shop, and I was asking the lady about them, and I think some of them are still in print. Some of them that he collaborated with, there was copyright issues with the other author's family members or something. There was an issue, so they're not all in print, but I think some of them still are.
And the Pennsylvania Lumber Museum
Logging Museum
has a Facebook page, and it's called believe it or not, it's called the Pennsylvania Lumber Museum.
Yeah.
And they posted something just 6 hours ago. So this page is relatively active than something 2 or 3 days. International Day of Forests, March 21st, 2025. Wow. I think I got to just stop this podcast.
just call it.
Who would have thought there was going to be a lumber museum?
Oh my God. Every time it just seems like every single time I'm like, oh, wow, this is how is there so much cool stuff related to railroading? Just, out and about. It's just, there's so much cool stuff. And this is a going concern, this lumber museum.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful facility. Really neat. I mean, and it's not just about logging railroads. There's a section up there about the CCC camps that were in the area. The giant log, they call them rafts, but they would float all the lumber down the Susquehanna River to Williamsport. Williamsport was one of the richest cities in America, I think in the world at one time. It was the lumber capital of the world for a while. All about that, how the immigrants came, their story, and worked in the woods, and I guess they called them wood hicks. That was their sort of disparaging term for them. But and the women that were the cooks and ran the bunkhouses and all that. It's really a neat museum. It's a shame it's so far off the beaten track. You really got to be wanting to go there. But it's
you gotta be wanting to go there to get there.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me see where I'm going to see if I can. This sounds like time for. Sounds like it's going to be time for
some elevator music.
Yeah. Lionel works the computer, which is always an unhappy situation.
It's a good thing we have an unlimited
podcasting.
Because as we go along, I know there are people listening that are, I hate just kind of giving them pieces of information because, well, I don't live that far from the lumber museum, so it's not that far away. It's on US 6, which is one of the longer highways in America, in the lower 48. There it is.
It's a very scenic route across northern Pennsylvania. A lot of people do that trip across 6 in the fall, because the leaves are spectacular, and all these little towns up there. And
Allegheny State Park. Oh, okay. So it's not far from Salamanca, New York. Or it's not far from... Yeah, Salamanca, which is not far from Bradford, which is in Pennsylvania. That's Interstate 86. It is kind of out of the way, but you don't really have to be going there to get there. I mean, it's not far from Corning, New York, or Elmira, New York, which I believe Sean Carney's from Elmira, I think he said, and St. Mary's. So it's in the middle of Pennsylvania, but it's not impossible to get to. Salamanca, of course, is the home of... don't tell me. Chris Costello Manufacturing, JL Innovations.
Yep. So and the JL Innovative Center for Model Railroading Excellence.
Yeah, and they're in the old Cow Palace, which I drove past many, many times thinking to myself, I'm not going to eat in there.
Well, I just saw Chris this past weekend at the RPM and down in the newsstand, and there are people that still pull in there thinking they can eat. And
yeah, well, I think he's kind of got the kitchen going for himself.
Oh, yes, he does. He does. So, not just himself. We've been there.
Well, have you?
Oh, yeah. We've had a couple of division meetings there, and the one we had a kind of a group build, and with the Western New York division, and by Zoom we connected together, and we had kielbasa, and what else do we have on the griddle back there? Kielbasa and something else, and then there was a Polish food truck, but we didn't have a big enough group. But he bought the cake. They make what's called a Wander cake. Oh, it's delicious. And I brought the wine pairing. I brought the wine pairing for the kielbasa. So we had quite the feast for our meeting up there. It's fun.
Hey, Lionel.
Yeah.
I think we should go eat at the Cow Palace.
I think we should. Yeah, I think we'll just drop in. I know we have a permanent invitation to drop in, and the best part is Chris owes me dinner. I think he owes me several dinners at this point. And he's just down the aisle from us at Springfield.
Right.
On the same wall. What RPM did you go to?
RPM East. It's the one that alternates between the Pittsburgh area and then the one in Philly. They alternate years. So it was the western one. Well, yeah, they call it RPM East, but it's in western part of Pennsylvania. But it was their turn this year.
That's the one that Dave Owens, the guy that runs NERPM. Excuse me.
Yep. Yeah, I saw Dave there. Said hi to him.
Yeah.
Eric Hansman, of course, runs it.
Was Eric Hansman run that one?
Well, I think he's a big organizer of that one.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. I know I know Dave Owens likes that RPM better than he likes his own.
Well, that's because he doesn't have to. He can just show up and have fun. He doesn't have to put out fires.
Man, oh man, these podcasts to me, this lumber thing is very cool. And Rail Guide, have you ever seen Rail Guide?
I don't think I have. Is that the one that has all known railroads printed on Google Maps or something like that? Or
it has any map. You can do current, you can do classic owners, current and classic, early owners, points of interest, abandoned ones, and then it has them all listed. And I've been trying to find, but the map is. I'm looking on the map at the same time I'm talking to you, which doesn't work. I can't I can't walk and chew bubble gum either at the same time.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, you should go on Rail Guide and see what
Rail
you can.
Guide, okay.
Yeah, what is it? Rail.guide. But if you just Google Rail Guide, you can.
And then
find...
if you have an Android phone, there is a Rail Guide app.
Is there really?
Well, of course
Yes.
there is. It's the 21st century.
I've used that quite a bit. Throughout the probably past year and a half. You can really go down a rabbit hole when you're just kind of scrolling through it.
Don't you, Mike? Don't you think this hobby is like way bigger than people realize?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's endless rabbit holes you could go down.
Yeah, and I think miniatures in general, people are just fascinated with it, and it leads you to all these different directions. And there's Meadville, and 6 goes through Meadville. I know I could find it if I was just concentrating on that, but I'm concentrating on watching the clock and talking to you and realizing we've barely covered any ground, and on and on and on.
If you would like to listen to Lionel try to find a railroad on a map, subscribe to the additional Patreon tier.
Yeah, that'll be that's the next tier up is Lionel looks for stuff on the internet.
It's not dude, where's my shirt? It's dude, where's the railroad?
Yeah, dude, where's that website? So how big is your layout overall? Because I mean, it's got in the May 2024 edition of RMC. It's got a beautiful track plan illustrated by Bernard Kopinski. So what is the overall, because it looks like the railroad basically runs down one wall of the basement.
Yeah, I don't even know what square footage it is, to be honest with you. I know it fills the one room and then shoots across the back wall of the house, across the basement steps, and then loops around the back wall. Square footage, I really have no idea. I just kind of kept building until I ran out of room, and I told my wife, I said, I need to come into this room. And she's like, oh, well, okay. And that other room where Tawanda is, that's kind of a family room down there. We have bookshelves and couch and, a TV and all that. So, and that's where the grandkids play. So,
okay.
So the whole basement is finished. It's all drywalled and carpet.
So Tawanda is actually in the family room.
Yep, along the back wall. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is that one of the areas you're finished first because it is in the family room?
No, actually, that still is foam and fascia and backdrop and track, and that's it. There's no scenery there yet.
How do you find? So foam is what the track is laid on.
In that section, I experimented with it, thinking, well, it was a fool's errand. It was a dumb idea, but at the time when I was building that was the last section. I thought, well, maybe I'll make this kind of sectional in case I ever want to pull it out of here, which was stupid because the wall is kind of a weird shape. There's a little jog in it there. I think that's where the front porch is. But anyway, I would never find a space that would fit in. And the foam actually is a little bit louder, even with Homosote row bed on top of it. I thought it'd be easier to kind of carve, terrain variances in there instead of having an open grid type thing. And it works for what it is because that section is mostly flat. But I don't know if I would use foam. It's actually foam on top of Luan. It's a thin plywood, just so I could mount the switch machines to something. And so that was a fool's errand. It'll work, and when I get the scenery in here, it'll be fine. But I don't know if I'd do that again. And building it in sections, that was stupid. I should have just just build it.
I think there's a lot of people. Like myself and like you that start building layouts of some reasonable size where they go, you know what? I'm going to build this in sections so that if I ever move, I can take it with me. And then, of course, you quickly realize that that's not that good of an idea.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
They'll carry me out of this house feet first.
Well, yeah.
But I told my wife, I said, if I kick the bucket, just have my train buds come in and let them take what they want, and then just take a Sawzall to it and take it out to a dumpster. I said, we're not living in a museum here. When I'm gone, just cut it up and get it the hell out of here so you can sell the house. Don't worry about it.
But I think David and Derek and the three of us would agree it's of museum quality.
Well, I appreciate that. That's
Yes.
thanks. But it is my own personal kind of art project. So, like I said, it's when it's not mine anymore, when I'm not around to enjoy it, out it goes.
Well, Derek's being pretty quiet, so maybe he doesn't think it the same as me and David.
No, I think it's superior to some museum quality. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
So
Mike,
go ahead, David.
I was going to ask. I'll use the word lightly since it's a obscure railroad, and with it not existing anymore, do you find times where it's really difficult to get the accuracy that you want from when you're modeling a certain section, or do you like that it's sort of obscure that you can just sort of go off of a few pictures and just let your mind wander and really stick with the creative side of model railroading, or kind of just, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious about, with it being such a railroad that just doesn't exist anymore, and it seems like only a few books about it, what kind of drives you to keep creating more and more with it?
Well, I guess to answer your question directly, it's sort of a little of both. I have enough photos that are inspirational, but some of them aren't kind of detailed enough that I can say, oh, I know exactly the dimensions of this structure, so I can build like Jack Burgess. I'm not doing a Jack Burgess kind of deal.
Right.
So there's some quote unquote freelancing going on when I don't know, or if I don't have the information, or to maintain operational interest, because it does have to run and be fun to operate. So I did take liberties there a little bit, and then I'm basically running like 1920s level of traffic, kind of in the 30s, late 30s, just to make it interesting. And so the structures and industries that go along with that, I got to build those, and some of them were gone by the time of the era that I'm really focusing on. So yeah, there's a little bit of flexibility there.
So what year is it? What year is it basically that you're?
Mid to late 30s. I tried when I was acquiring rolling stock not to have anything too modern that was around after 1942, obviously, because that's when it was gone. So, but a few things slipped through. I think that technically were a little bit too new. But as I go along, I'll hopefully get rid of those, pull those off the layout, and get more accurate rolling stock.
I don't expect any of you to necessarily know the answer to this question, but I'm fascinated by this particular question. So I'll put it out there just for the heck of it. I'm fascinated by, like, a railroad like the Susquehanna in New York, that it existed and it was 142 miles long, because I can't imagine that building a railroad that's 142 miles long, even back in the turn of the century of 1900, would have been particularly cheap. And they've got steam locomotives and whatever. And I'm fascinated by all these tiny railroads that existed. Like, does anybody here have any sense as to how that occurred?
Well, that was the only let me just say one thing. It was actually 40 some miles long, not 140. So it was pretty small.
Even crazier.
Yeah. Well, that was the only game in town, right? It was built. At least mine was built in, I think, 1905-ish. So that was fairly late as far as railroads, but there was untapped resources there, and so the timber. Actually, what they wanted was the bark off the hemlock. They didn't care so much about the timber. They wanted the bark to use in tanneries. The railroad was a subsidiary of the U.S. Leather Company. And the U.S. Leather Company also owned the Central Pennsylvania Lumber Company, and they owned all that land around there, and it was mostly hemlock back then, and they wanted the bark they used in the processing of leather. So I think land was relatively cheap at the time because it was steep, and the mountains were steep, and the valleys were narrow, and the railroad was the only way you were going to get in there. Short of horses, there was no earth-moving equipment or anything to carve roads in there. So it was railroads or bust, and I guess they figured it was worth it to throw a railroad up through there to extract the resources.
Yeah, from a historical perspective, I think a lot of these, like, railroads in the early days, I can't speak to the earlier 1900s, but in the 1800s, a lot of railroads that were laid were doubling down on existing bets for people who owned the land or resources that were already being extracted. Like, the railroads didn't come first. The railroads were an efficiency and a way to capture more market share of an existing commodity, not a brand new pie in the sky idea. Let's put a railroad here and then we'll figure out there's an industry. Usually the industry already existed and the railroads wanted to double down.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's gold in our hills. We need a way to go get it. It wasn't like, hey, let's build a railroad and see what happens.
Exactly.
I think that comes down to basically what a railroad is. It's a form of transportation. It was a way to get the materials to and from the industries, and that was the only viable way of doing it. And especially in that terrain, specifically with Susquehanna, New York, it kind of reminds me of the very small amount of railroads that were in the Missouri Ozarks in that sort of same time period that aren't there anymore because they got replaced by trucks and better roads, basically. So
yeah. Well, there were still big plans. There was another railroad up there that never got. It existed on paper. There was a lot of paper railroads. So there was one called the PB&E, the Pittsburgh. I think it was Pittsburgh, Binghamton, and Eastern, and they actually graded part of it and bought locomotives, but they never built more than about 3 miles of it, and it went bust. And you can still see the roadbed up there, and part of the roadbed actually is Route 414 now. But
that's fascinating.
It never got close to Binghamton, never got close to Pittsburgh, it never got close to pretty much anywhere except Canton, Pennsylvania. That's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, like when you think about building I just am fascinated when you think about building a railroad in the late 1800s or early 1900s, and they would build this 40-mile railroad, and the amount of manpower and everything to get these railroads built, you kind of just sit there going, how did they do this? Because recently they've been building a railroad from the Orlando airport, the Bright Line, they call it, and they've had to build a line from the Orlando airport to the east coast of Florida, and it was $1 million a mile.
Yeah, that's the railroad that keeps killing people, right?
Not on purpose.
No, but isn't it one of the most dangerous mile-for-mile railroads?
Well, yeah,
in recent history.
The part that goes north and south up and down the coast. It's called this Bright Line, and it's supposed to be high-speed rail, and people keep pulling in front of it because
I'm glad that Derek doesn't work in the marketing department for
them. Yeah, no kidding.
we're the railroad who kill people.
But no, they kill more people, a greater rate of death. That's all. It's not exclusive to them. It's just they're really good at it.
Yeah. Well, the train, they're going 70, 80 miles an hour. There's a town not far from my home in Ontario, Alliston, Ontario, and it's CP, the Canadian Pacific Main. Well, I guess it's now the CPKC. I'm not buying into that at all, and I don't like the paint scheme, and I don't understand the point of the Ottawa Senators. But that's another story altogether.
But to get back to your question about the cost, labor was cheap back then. There was pick and shovel, and there was a lot of immigrants coming into the country, and they would work for pennies, but it was still better deal than they got in the old country. And there was a newspaper article, copy of it in the one book, Caseman's book, and there was a derailment on the Susquehanna, New York, and it was in the Tawana newspaper. And yes, there was a derailment on the railroad, and Mrs. So-and-so from such and such was lightly injured, and attorney so-and-so and such, he, sustained minor injuries, and a locomotive was destroyed and rolled over, and several cars were destroyed. And, oh, by the way, 7 Italians died. And that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say this little town of Alliston has a CP main line going through it, and it's track speed. It's like the speed is 79 mile an hour, and they go right through the middle of town. The crossing is right across Main Street. It's a typical small town. And I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, they passed a no horn ruling because people didn't like the horn. And I'm thinking, and you stand there, and here comes this, 100-car freight train at 70 plus miles an hour, and you're thinking, I'm thinking a horn would be a really good idea right about now.
Yeah.
It goes thundering through town. So you said, so have you had any I don't know what the word would be. Do you long to be able to run diesels on your railroad, or are you quite happy that you're only running HO scale steam locomotives?
Oh no, I'm quite happy just to run small steam. A couple of my friends say, "Oh, I'm going to bring my whatever it is, scale trains, AC1 or whatever. We're going to run that through Wheelerville." I said, "Okay, but don't roll a rail over with that six axle diesel." But yeah, no, I have no desire to run diesels on it.
And then you spoke of Broadway Limited. Like, is that what you said, BLM?
Oh, initially, yeah, but because when I was thinking about what railroad to pick, I was going to do the Elmira branch, and Broadway Limited didn't exist yet. So if you wanted Pensy steam, brass was the way to go. Since then, Broadway's brought out a whole slew of different Pensy steam engines, and making it easier to do a Pensy layout, but too late. Though I did pre-order one of their little B6 SB 060 switch engines. It's kind of a neat looking engine.
Oh, those look fantastic. I thought about pre-ordering one of those too.
Yeah, because you definitely need one, Derek.
I definitely need one. Yeah. I don't own any steam locomotives. I feel like I should own at least one.
We got to own at least one.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Just so it runs.
You can move the covered hoppers around.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
That's right. Yeah. If you don't know Mike, Derek has a fetish for plain gray covered hoppers.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
We all have our weaknesses, I guess.
Yeah. I ordered a couple more yesterday, actually. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I said I was going to stop, but then.
You've got a problem.
I don't know
you have a serious problem.
But they mentioned them, and I was like, I should buy a couple. Well, when you pre-order something, it doesn't cost any money. So.
That's true. Well, and if you put it on your credit card, it doesn't cost any money either.
That would be more dangerous.
Yeah, you don't have to pay for it. Holy mackerel! Have you bought any? So, are most of your locomotives brass?
I got two brass. I remoted a couple of PFM 280s. The rest are Bachmann, actually. Small steam.
Okay. Now, do you have somebody that reconditioned your locomotives, or do you take that upon yourself? Or
no, I did it myself, just as a learning experience.
Was it hard?
Well, the hard part is telling yourself to turn that first screw to take the boiler off a brass locomotive, but fortify yourself with a beer or two, and screw it. It's all just just go for it.
Liquid courage.
Yeah, well, like Tony Custer says, it's all fodder for something. Just go for it.
Yeah, well, mistakes are the best way to learn. That's for sure.
Well, that's right. So luckily they run pretty well, and those old PFM United mechanisms, they're like Swiss watches. If you put a new motor in them and treat them nice, they run pretty well. And
this is all pretty much self-taught, is it?
Yeah. YouTube or. I read a lot different brass. There's a brass repair and repaint list or something on Facebook, and there's a lot of knowledge there. You can.
Oh, is there really?
You can clean. Oh yeah.
Well, okay. Okay. Let's play. Get ready to play your elevator music again. This is David's favorite part. Listening to me fumble along on the. So what's the Facebook page?
Let me look. Let me pull it up here on my laptop. Right. It's the brass repair and repaint list. Churning. Why won't this come up?
The problem is I can't spell when I'm doing a podcast.
Yeah, it's the podcast's fault.
Yeah, it is.
Oops.
Yeah.
The Brass Model Paint and Repair Group.
Brass Model
Paint and Repair.
It's a private group.
Is it?
Yes.
You got there already?
Yeah.
Why are you so fast and I'm not? You seem to be you seem to be going at nuclear speed, and I seem to be going backwards compared to you. What's wrong with me? Somebody tell me, please, what's wrong with me?
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other story. It's got 3.4. It's got 3,400 members, and it's called the Brass Model Paint and Repair Group. Wow.
Yep.
And you're right. The hobby is huge. How can Brass Model
massive.
Paint and Repair have 3,400 members?
This hobby is huge. Like, I found something else today about that I wanted to talk to some. I thought Altoona Works. I was just scrolling through and I found something called Altoona Works, and it's some guy that follows all the trains out of Altoona. And I'm thinking he'd be really interesting to talk to. It's just the hobby's massive. It's massive. All right. Well, that's it. Mike,
Yes, sir.
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Could we do another episode about your model railroad planning article?
Sure. Anytime.
How about in about 5 minutes?
Okay.
Okay. So, but that won't be on the day after this one because I think these two can be standalone. They're all standalone podcasts. But I just think that so after you finish listening to this, if you patiently sit beside your podcasting thing that you listen to podcasts on, your podcast player, in 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have a podcast with Mike Hauk and David and Derek about his article in Model Railroad Planning 2025.
So pull up your favorite elevator music and stand by.
Yeah, exactly. Just stand there staring at whatever your podcast player is. If it's your computer,
Don't move a muscle.
Yeah, don't
Just
move.
keep refreshing. Eventually, it'll come. come up.
Yeah, just keep refreshing. Well, I think it's going to be on the Patreon channel. It's going to be it's going to be a special edition for the Patreon members. It's special. The Patreon channel, all our members on the Patreon channel, they're special. Derek, can you give out our email address?
I can. If you would like to contact us through the World Wide Web and the magic of email, you can do that by emailing us at modellerslife@gmail.com. That's modeler with 1 L like lumber, not 2 L's like Williamsport.
Nice.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. And if you didn't catch that, you can go to our website and click on the picture of the moderately agitated mailboy in a particularly agitated state. And boom, the address will be filled out for you. And all you can do is fill in your text and hit send, and away you go. And eventually, someday, we will read that email on the air. If Kelly ever gets better, Kelly, we can't do email without you, buddy. And he's working on getting better. He got the biggest case of the Springfield grip that I've ever seen in my life. Springfield crud.
It's in his contract that we can't record viewer mail without him.
Exactly. It's just not the same.
Waiting and waiting. No,
it's just not the same without Kelly.
All 5 of those emails are waiting to be read.
Yeah, all 5 of them. Yeah. And so what else? Oh yeah. So if you enjoyed this podcast, which I'm sure you did, and you'd like to hear another podcast with Mike on it, you can click on our Patreon link, and just for a few cents a day, you can join our Patreon channel that has a lot of benefits. Number one, on Wednesday nights, there's a Patreon chat group that people really enjoy getting together, and they do modeling, and they discuss modeling, and they discuss model railroading and all sorts of things. And also, if you belong to our Patreon group, you can get 10% off any purchase you make at White Rose Hobbies.
Wow. What a deal.
Yeah, and they are in York, Pennsylvania, and their URL is whiterosehobbies.com. Probably. Seeing as how this is
like that was a question mark, not a period.
Yeah, seeing as how that's the first time I've ever said that on the air, I'm kind of going, probably it's whiterosehobbies.com, and I'm typing now.
So you nailed this in the rehearsal. You really got it right.
Yeah, that is right. It's whiterosehobbies.com. The word white, the word rose, the word hobbies, and then a dot, and then com. So yeah, if you're a member of our Patreon group, you can get 10% off any purchase of anything they sell, either in the store or on their website. You get 10% off, which is actually a substantial savings, and it would not take you long to recoup any money you spent on your Patreon. If you spent $50 a month on hobby stuff and you bought it at White Rose, you'd recoup your Patreon money. Boom. And that's where you go there and you get the link for it and all that stuff. So that's cool. And if you go to the next level, the T-shirt level, you still get the 10% off at White Rose Nurseries, but you also enter the contest that's sweeping the globe. Hey, dude, where's my shirt? And everybody gets a special white AML Modeler's Life T-shirt that's only available to Patreon members, and you get that every year. And the question is, what year? And I think that's it. I think we've covered everything.
Lionel.
Yeah.
By the time this episode comes out, do you think the AML T-shirt shop will be open?
I think we're working hard on that.
I feel optimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I think with the help of, I have a little friend that Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
I have with the help of a little friend I have that's helping me, guiding me through it step by step. I do believe we're very close to having our merchandise shop directly on our website, which is amodelerslife.com. So if you go there, you can see all the recent episodes. You can see all kinds of stuff. And yes, you go there, and eventually, maybe now, our merchandise shop is open there, which would be cool, because then every time we want to make a T-shirt, we can just put it up there. And we seem to always be wanting to make a new kind of T-shirt. And if you go to White Rose Hobbies and you're talking to either Ryan or Tom, tell them Lionel sent you and see if that helps.
It could hurt.
It could, yeah. Just see if I'm interested to see if that helps or hurt. Ask for Tom, because Tom is a social media guy. Ask for Tom and tell him Lionel sent you. And you never know. Maybe you get a free paintbrush or something. And that's it. I believe that's it. I think we've covered everything. So, Mike, are you ready?
I believe I'm ready.
Okay. So remember, a Modeler's Life podcast is considered marginally adequate by 6 out of 10
modelers of obscure, abandoned short lines.
A Modeler's Life is sponsored by Because I Love Sushi. You could love any old sushi, but would it love you back?
It's another Lincoln Homer.
Nice.
Oh, that was good.
That was a good one. Yes, you've been practicing.
I did. I was practicing in front of the mirror earlier.
That's the best place to practice.